Since releasing our own Who the F Did I Marry saga back in 2020, we've had a long list of other women writing in to share their own. And each one has a wild and unbelievable story to tell. Sometimes we're emailed, sometimes we're tagged on social media, and sometimes it's just a simple DM of support that leads to, yeah, I have my own story as well. Well, that is what happened with our next story. Stacey sent us a message on our Instagram that read, I have been traveling a lot for work lately, and I wanted to let you girls know that you have been keeping me company. I absolutely love your podcast because I too have a story. I was engaged to a cancer-faking polygamist who is currently sitting in federal prison awaiting trial. There are so many victims that we even have our own Facebook support group. He has a long history of cons, and in fact, our save the dates for our wedding did not even have his real name, as he went by a fake name when he was with me, which I did not know until after the fact. What is wrong with these motherfuckers? Well, this clearly got our attention, so we went down the rabbit hole of researching this guy, John Edmund Bragg II, or as some people know him as Sam Blair, John Good, Matthew John Solomon, and John Kelleher, to name a few. He truly is the all-around con man.
He was cute. He would make these jokes, and he was sarcastic, and I don't know, there was something very charismatic about him, and he made me laugh. We got engaged. I think he was feeling some heat because he had met everybody that was really close to me, and I think he could just sense that they all knew he was full of shit. I couldn't stand him. With my mom being with him for a week, I think that's when she was like sounding alarms, and I think that's when it really picked up that she needed to get me out of this because he was just creeping her out. I wasn't giving up. All her friends were on board. My sister was on board. Everybody was on board. We're going to do it at a certain time. And he was coming out to get the pizza. And there we were. It was something. I wish we had a video of it.
Welcome to Ex-Wives Undercover.
Liars, cheaters, and love cons.
I'm Amber.
And I'm Athena.
First we told our story, and now we're sharing all of your craziest and most heart-wrenching stories of love gone wrong. Sometimes we laugh.
And sometimes we cry.
But more importantly,
we stand together. All right, girl. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
The views, information, or opinions expressed on our show by our guests are solely the views of those individuals involved, and by no means represent absolute facts. Opinions expressed by the host and guests may change at any time. Our podcast and YouTube show may at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to suicide, abuse, violence. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Season 5, Episode 1 of Stacey's story, John Bragg, the all-around con man. In July 2008, Stacey was a young 20-something in New Orleans, Louisiana, fresh out of law school with the world ahead of her. But her life took a left turn when she met a man by the name of Sam Blair, one fateful weekend while at her friend's apartment complex swimming pool.
I was single, not looking. I was hanging out with my friends a lot. You know, it was 20s, going out every weekend. I'd just gotten my first apartment, my first big girl apartment. I just started my first big girl job.
So let's move into the vibe at your friend's apartment complex. It sounds like that was sort of a hub for you and all your friends.
So basically it was summer, and every weekend, Friday and Saturday, we would be at her house, at her apartment, and we would just be hanging by the pool. That was it. And there were a lot of other people who lived there too. And so it became like a social thing, and you would meet other people, and then you would meet people who lived there. And this was one of those situations where there was a group of guys that were living there, and we sort of all got in the mix with them. That's how all of this started.
What did you know about this group of guys, and where were they from, and what did they do?
From what I understand, contract workers for Dish Network, which was a cable installation company. They were all based in Alabama at the time. That's where he came from. So I don't know. So all of them had been sent here to New Orleans to do, I don't know the whole, they were all sent here to do a bunch of cable jobs. And they were all being housed and put up at this apartment complex where my friend lived. And there were like 15 of them.
As you can imagine, it could have been a scene from Love Island or The Bachelor. The drinks were flowing and hormones were on fire. Now, I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert before we get too far in this story. Sam, the man Stacey would meet at the pool and eventually fall for, well, that was not actually his real name. It was John Edmund Bragg II. Yes, you heard that right. Oh, but it gets better. You're gonna want to buckle up for this story. Let's learn more about their first meeting.
I met him at the pool. We were all hanging out one weekend. He introduced himself as Sam Blair from Alabama, and he ended up getting my number. And then the next morning at like 8 a.m., I wasn't even awake yet, I had texts from him already, the good morning texts. And it started from there, and he asked me out. He never stopped. I think we went on one date after that, like immediately after that, and that was it.
How did you kind of fall for him? Was he love bombing you, and like what kinds of things would he say? Or
my first thing was that he was really funny. Like, I didn't notice he was attractive. He was cute, but he would make these jokes and he was sarcastic, and I don't know, there was something very charismatic about him, and he made me laugh.
But okay, so my immediate thought was, we know his name is John, but he was going by Sam in front of all of you, the people at the apartment. Was his friends calling him Sam? Did they know him as Sam? Oh my goodness.
Yep, he had assumed this identity, and he was Sam. No one knew in my circle that he was John Bragg until the end.
Let's talk about your first date and like I don't even know, like the first couple weeks of what he told you about himself, as far as, did he go to school? Does he have brothers and sisters? What's his family like? Does he have kids? Was he a baby daddy? Was he a sperm donor?
Honestly, Amber, I don't even remember what our first date was. I think we probably went to dinner, but he told me that he was from West Virginia, that he had two sisters, that his parents had split up, and that his dad now lived in Florida. Then he told me that he did have a young son at the time named, and that he had a friend, a very good female friend named Beverly, who was getting older in age and was single and wanted to have a child, and had asked him to be her sperm donor because he was so good looking that she wanted her child to have his DNA. But he told me that she had ended up marrying a surgeon who was raising the child, and that he had visitation and he paid child support, but that basically the stepdad was going to eventually end up adopting and raising Brock because they had gotten married.
I mean, the only reason I have my bullshit meter going is because I've been through it. But at the time, did you feel like, that seems really sketch? You donated your sperm, and then the surgeon married her, and he's going to raise the kid. Like, did you feel like that's weird?
Not really, because I feel like maybe I watched too many movies, but I feel like that shit happens, like I don't know. And then I had a lesbian friend who had a partner, and then they had a male friend. He's lucky I have lesbian friends who did this, because else I may have had a red flag raised. But they had a very good guy friend of theirs donate, And then I was thinking, my only red flag with that was really like, I mean, I was like, you had to have sex with her a lot, right, to conceive. And I remember him saying something like, yeah, I mean, we don't really need to get into all of that, but I think he basically insinuated that we didn't really have, it was like a jack off, stick it in her thing.
Oh, like in vitro type of situation. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously I've gone through IVF and it's expensive to buy some sperm, I'm sure, because it was expensive to do the whole procedure. So, I mean, I guess you're right. Like it probably does happen because people who need that,
Mm-hmm.
you have a friend who's really good
Right.
looking who wants to donate.
And I think like the deal was she was not going to make him on the hook. But, since he was such a great, upstanding person, he decided to pay the child support anyway. But that she was like, no, you don't have to be responsible for this child. I mean, looking back, it's like, yeah, it doesn't, I mean, it's like some of the stories are somewhat based in reality, but then he always would take it to another level.
If you guessed that the story about being a sperm donor is incorrect, you'd have guessed right. You see, Sam's baby mama was, in fact, actually his wife Beverly, who lived in another state. And that child was theirs as a married couple. Sam is clearly a pretty imaginative storyteller. Let's see what else he told Stacey.
And then he told me that he had a trust fund for his family, that he kept waiting that he was waiting for his trust fund to come in, and that once his trust fund came in, that he was gonna, never have to work again. So basically he acted like he was, like I said in my letter, like the heir to the John Deere empire. I mean, he acted like he came from something, but of course the trust fund never came to fruition. But he mentioned that trust fund to everyone he met every day. He was very open about that he was waiting on a trust fund. Oh, and then he also said he was a graduate of Purdue. And I think he came up with that because Drew Brees went to Purdue. He was the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And for some reason, I think he thought maybe that was being in New Orleans, that would impress people. I don't know, because I don't know where else the hell he came up with Purdue. But he didn't. I don't even think he graduated high school.
Sam, aka John Bragg, followed the playbook of all good con men. Love bomb their victim with compliments, take them on fancy dates, charm them with their charisma, and of course, move the relationship forward at top speed. And that is exactly what he did. Within just a couple of weeks, Sam moved into Stacey's apartment.
It was like he was like a sniper. I mean, it was like so subtle that it's like he was in there before I even knew it. It was one of those things where like you start dating someone. We had been on like one proper date, and then he started the thing where, they stay over, and it was just easier to stay over than go home. And I really honestly think like within 2 weeks, the guy had moved in, but it wasn't like a ceremonial thing. He just never left. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's being young and just not really, I guess, thinking. I mean, but he was so good at, honestly, it's like he was so good at just not leaving that I didn't really think about it. I mean, but he also like we were doing something together like every day. There was no space. There was no, you go home and we were like married like not married, but we were like a couple. This is how it is. Within, I would say like 2 weeks. And then he was there, and he had moved stuff in, but in retrospect, all he really moved in was a duffel bag, because I think that's all he fucking had.
How was it living with him? Was he contributing to the bills, food,
No.
utilities, all that?
let me back. Yes, he was contributing. Now, the money was coming from other sources, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yes, if I had to answer, yes, he was contributing. We would go out to eat a lot, and he always paid. And okay, but I don't think he ever contributed to my rent. I don't remember that. Like, I don't ever remember him helping me with like bills. But anytime we went out, whenever time we went on a vacation, he paid for everything.
Well, that's good. Okay, so now you needed to buy a car, but somehow he ended up driving it. That go down.
I had a car, I had a Saturn, little four door, and I had gone to the Saturn dealership to get an oil change. And while I was waiting for my car, I went to the showroom, and they had a new SUV out, and I was looking at it. Now, I wasn't going to buy it. I had just commented how pretty it was, and I joke all the time about things that I want. I'm not really going to go get them. And we were sitting by the pool, and he goes, "Well, he goes, if you get the car, I'll pay the note." But then I said, I don't want a car note. Like, I had I was almost paid off on the other one. And I was like, I don't want a car note. And he goes, "Oh, don't worry about the car note. I'll get you the car note." And then he did that whole, you have to have a man go buy a car with you. So I'm going to go with you. And being that whole trope of women can't go buy cars because they'll. And so we went to the dealership, ended up in the fucking car, buying the car. I never drove the car because he always drove the car. It was always, I'd go to work. Well, I mean, I went to work and all that, but if we went out, he was always driving the car. Like, it was his car. He would take it on weekends to go do everything. So all of this, in retrospect, all happened at the same time. And all the evidence points to he lost his job, and he needed to have a place to live and get a car. So he was supposed to be he was driving a van. All of these installers had vans. They had company cars that had all their equipment in it. He ended up telling me some bullshit story about how he gave his van back, and he was going to use his own car. I don't know. It was something. But then he had let his friend in Alabama borrow his car. And so he had to go back and get his car, and he was going to fly there and drive it back. Well, so he does that. He literally flies out on a Sunday, comes back Monday night, and he has this car, which is like a crossover, or one of those, it was a Blazer. That's what it was. And the Blazer, the passenger side window had a trash bag for a window, which would have been fine because shit happens, but he never got it fixed. It literally sat there, and that was a red flag to my mom, because you get your car, nobody drives around like that if you're a decent job holding person. You get your car fixed.
This is the perfect spot to check in with Stacey's mom to get her thoughts on Sam Blair.
I thought he was a grifter. Stacey had just started with a law firm, and she went and bought a new car. So I think he hung on to her, thinking she could support him. 2 weeks later, he's moved into her apartment. That's not normal. I couldn't stand him. This guy's got a trust fund, but he's got a beat up Chevy with a plastic back glass door. And it's like, what? You got a trust fund and you can't even change the glass? It was ridiculous. She was in La La Land.
Stacey met a man going by the name of Sam in July of 2008. And by the end of the summer, early fall, she was engaged. And let's not forget that while the internet was in full force, it wasn't used as much for any major undercover work like it is today. And even if she did want to snoop a little bit, she didn't even have his real name, which would have made it nearly impossible to find out anything. Okay, so back to the story. Let's hear how the engagement happened. All right, y'all, strap in because you're going to get engaged. So, we are like neck and neck on the crazy train. Your story.
Yeah, we are.
Ooh, here we go. Who's going to win at the end? Oh my God. I
rings,
love
I
this.
think.
Okay, you get engaged.
Mhm.
Tell me how that went down. Did you know it was coming? And give us the
Yeah,
deets.
because I was talking to my mom about this. She had to remind me about this story today. We went and looked at rings. He's of course the trust fund, and honestly, at this time, I'm really not thinking. I'm not thinking it's real. I'm thinking he's just being. It's kind of like that future faking or that love bombing thing they do, you know. And so we went to this jeweler in New Orleans who my family knew. So we go to this place, we look at the rings. Of course, the ring I pick out is like $75,000 because I'm not thinking any of this is real. Like, I'm just like, whatever. And so we go, we get the ring. Well, I pick out the ring I want and I leave the room. He sat with the jeweler and they like wrote up how he was going to pay for it. And he wrote up the invoice. He didn't pay for the ring that he told me he paid for the ring that day. Or send him the trust fund, the wire information. Spoiler alert, he did not pay for the ring that day. He did not pay for anything that day. He did not. So when we got engaged, this is a good one. We got engaged and he literally just asked me to marry him at our apartment. It was going to be a big deal and he was going to like do a big proposal. I just wasn't going to know when it happened. And that didn't happen. He literally just like gave me a ring in the apartment. And when I opened, and it didn't have a box either. It wasn't like, here, like you have a ring box and you open it and you see the ring. No, he literally just like handed me a ring. And when I saw it, I went, that was not the ring that I picked out. It was like if the ring I picked out was like put through a blender. Like it was just like shitty. Like the diamond it wasn't, or like it had need to be cleaned or something. So here he tells me that he didn't get the ring I wanted because after we left the store, the jeweler called him and said that Peyton Manning had just returned a piece of jewelry that he had given his wife. And the jeweler thought it looked a lot like the ring that I picked out. And maybe it'd be cool if he bought that one instead. And so I had Peyton Manning's wife's ring, which I knew in my gut, I'm not that dense, like in the back of my head, I knew it was bullshit. And I know jewelry. It's bizarre how you just bury shit because you don't want to believe it. I mean, you had a fake ring too, I think.
Heck yeah. He also shoved it at me too. He didn't say any words of love or anything. It just here. I was like, are you going to ask me or what's going on here? No, I mean, but were you shocked when you saw the different ring though? And was it, I mean, I don't know.
Not shocked. I think I was sort of underwhelmed and disappointed. And it triggered in me that he did not have the money he said he had. Like something clicked in my head that was like, I assumed maybe he just couldn't afford it and he had gone out and gotten another ring and just kind of told me this bullshit story so that he wasn't embarrassed that he couldn't afford the ring that I wanted. I don't know that I thought it was fake, but I knew that something was wrong with it.
For anyone who doesn't know, Peyton Manning lives in New Orleans, right? Famous.
He's from New Orleans and hasn't lived there and at least almost 30. I mean, he hasn't lived there in probably 25 years. I think he went to the Colts, but especially he was still playing for the Indianapolis Colts in 2008. There is no logical reason for Peyton Manning to have any of this happen. I didn't say anything. He did. He told everybody in the world this stupid story, and you could just see faces when he told this story. They were like, like there was no wow. I mean, everyone knew it was the most goofiest story in this ugly ring that needed to, like, I just kept thinking, I honestly, in the back of my head went, well, maybe he was carrying it around in his pocket or something and it got dirty because it needed to, like, it was like cloudy. Like it looked like a fucking gumball machine ring.
Did he say the trust money came in and I quit my job? So is he pretending now and you're like Bullshit.
No, he said, no, he was still going to work. He never not went to work. Like, he never told me he got, like, he was
Okay.
to the bitter end, was going to work.
How did he pay for the ring then? Like,
He
he's
told me
still
that
thinking you believe him.
Yes.
Where did he get $75K?
He paid for he said that he had his dad send the money or something. But he paid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He said that somebody, that was a more expensive ring than the ring I picked out. You know, it was a Peyton Manning. That was like a 6-figure ring.
Oh.
Yeah. That ring went in that ring went in the fucking trash.
Peyton Manning's wife's ring. Yep, that's the story Sam went with. And I bet you're curious where that ring actually came from. You ready for this? Well, Sam was actually still married to a woman named Beverly, and Beverly worked for an MLM marketing company that sold costume jewelry. You're going to want to keep that in mind because later on in this story, someone else also got some of that beautiful costume jewelry. One thing we've learned from various other women's story in our podcast is that these types of guys will want to isolate you from your closest allies. And Sam was no different in that regard and made sure to always keep Stacey away and busy.
That was when he wanted to go out of town every weekend. And so we would go to Destin every weekend. We even went to Disney, like, for my birthday. We he wanted to go on these long trips that, like, driving 15-hour trips, you know, every weekend he wanted to go do something that did not involve my friends. And I kind of chalked it up to, well, when you're new in a relationship, you do spend all your time together. I think he was feeling some heat because he had met everybody that was really close to me, and I think he could just sense that they all knew he was full of shit. And then that's when he started putting stuff in my head about, well, you know, your mom is this, or, you know, your mom's too controlling. You need to have your own life, or I don't like your friend because of such and, you know, they do that. They make you doubt everyone but them. Like, they're the only one who, you know, honestly, the only people that he did want to be around was my best friend Katie and her husband. And I don't know why. I don't know why they were different for him. I think maybe because Katie's just very, like, she is an actress. So I guess she was very good at being happy for us. And he didn't catch on that she knew. But other than them, we didn't hang out with anybody. Like, it was,
We talked to Anna Rowe, an expert in romance fraud, to get her thoughts. She is the founder of Catch the Catfish and most recently began a nonprofit called Love Said to prevent, support, and empower victims with Cecilia Fieldjoy of Tinder swindler fame. In this clip of our interview with Anna, she discusses the concept of adult grooming, isolation, and what that first red flag should be.
The grooming process is pretty much aligned with that of paedophiles. And that's a horrible comparison to make. But it's that process and manipulation. It's the same as narcissists. We see that mirroring, reading them to find out what it is that's going to be able to hook them, and using all of that information against the child to build a picture that's, you know, what the child will respond to. And narcissists and psychopaths do exactly the same thing, but with adults. But the fact of the matter is that grooming can happen to anyone at any age, and you don't have to be vulnerable. All the victims that I talk to, and it was with me as well, it's just a time in your life where you're vulnerable in that moment. So we've got the grooming, and that's still the most hit page on my website, adult grooming, because I think people just resonate with it when they start reading about it. So for me, that grooming process is where they're setting the scene of how things will be and what they want you to believe about them. They're also, in the process of doing that, making themselves appear vulnerable so that you feel comfortable in giving them back the same sort of detail and information about yourself. They start telling you that, you don't need anybody else in your life, that it's just you and them against the world. There's no one else needed. So that isolation process sort of starts, doesn't it? I think the biggest warning that we can give anybody is that when that relationship does happen very, very quickly and it feels really, really intense and you get that soulmate connection, that's the red flag. Because all of the behaviours in a healthy relationship would happen over a much longer period of time. They're all amazing things to feel from your partner, but when they happen so quickly and it is so intense, that's for me where the red flag is. And of course, if you feel that panic or you feel pressured, especially if there's a money ask in the case of romance fraud, that's when you've got to take a step back and think, hang on a minute, would anybody that really cared about me want me to feel that way? There's far more people with this personality type that walk the earth amongst us than I think any of us dare to imagine. It's quite frightening, actually.
While all of Stacey's friends and family were getting big red flags about Sam, Stacey was basking in love and planning her wedding. She was focused on the future and everything it would bring. But unfortunately, if she had slowed down and looked at the present, there might have been a few clues about what was really going on. Here's a perfect example of the old saying, hindsight is 20/20. Most of us can certainly relate in one way or another. Tell me about this overnight cable install job. Yikes.
Woo!
No good.
Well, speaking of my best friend, this was her birthday. We all went to dinner. Her birthday's in August. It's late August, August 24th. So that's where we are on the timeline. We're 6 weeks in. And then we went to dinner for her birthday. And I was showing the ring. I just gotten the ring. And I was like, everybody look at the ring. And everybody told me that her brother's girlfriend at the time, who he later married, told me, I knew that ring was a fucking fake piece of shit, but I wasn't going to tell you that because I just met you and I wanted to be happy for you. So we went to dinner and then we were all going to go out afterwards. And he told me that he couldn't stay out with us because he had to go do an overnight job. Now, I'm sure this does happen. I'm sure because it was an office building and they had to do it on the weekend. They were going to put Wi-Fi or internet or something in. And this does happen. It really wasn't goofy to me. I was actually, to be honest with you, happy to have a night off from him. Like, it was a lot. And when you're only 6 weeks in, you should still not be able to get enough of each other. But he was so on top of me all the time that I was like, ooh, I get a night to myself. I was happy, I could sleep in my bed by myself. So did that. And then he came home the next morning and that was it. Well, what really happened was he had been talking to another girl, invited from Arizona, had invited her to New Orleans for the week to visit with him. She did not know that he was engaged to me. She thought that they were going to get married, that they were headed that way. He picked her up in my car from the airport or wherever. She took her out and then she stayed for the week and she said, and she was in a hotel. And this was also the girl who was sending him money to my address, to my apartment, but that I did not know because he was intercepting the mail every day because he didn't work. So when he was staying home all day, he would get the mail first. So I had no idea this girl existed. Didn't know she was sending him money, but she was funding him at that time. But she also thought she was sending him money for other things.
It is wild though, because they stayed in your town. Someone could have easily seen her and him together. It's kind of ballsy.
That's the first time someone has brought that up, but you're right. Yeah.
Just so we are all on the same page, because there's a lot going on in this story, let me break it down for you. Stacey met Sam in July of 2008 in Louisiana. His real name is John Bragg. We also know that he had a son with his wife Beverly, who lived in Indiana. And now we're learning about a new woman he was having a relationship with from Arizona. We'll call her Chrissy. She knew him as Sam Blair as well, and they had met just about 3 to 4 months prior to Stacey meeting him, and they had been carrying on a long-distance relationship. In fact, they were planning on moving in together in October, and big surprise, marriage. Next time on Ex-Wives Undercover.
With my mom being with him for a week, I think that's when she was like sounding alarms. And I think that's when it really picked up that she needed to get me out of this, because he was just creeping her out. I think this is when he starts getting a little desperate, because he realizes like time's running out because people are figuring him out. The real estate people had photocopies of my driver's license. Like, he went into my purse, took this stuff out, and photocopied it for them. I had he was all in my stuff. He had my debit card number, my credit card numbers, everything. And so this is when, like, it was like my family and my friends are panicking, and he's panicking because it's all kind of, it's kind of crumbling. And I think, and that's when like my aunt called me and literally was like, you need to slow down. You need to slow all of this. And that's when it kind of got, and then, but at the same time, I'm still in La La Land. I've just ordered my save the dates. They've just come in. I'm making a guest list.
Radars were going off, and I wasn't giving up. So I had to do everything behind her back. This guy's dangerous. Everything was a lie, but I knew it. That's why we had to act fast.
Can't get enough of Ex-Wives Undercover? If so, make sure to subscribe to our show so that you don't miss any of our exclusive subscriber-only podcast episodes. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok, as well as join our true crime community on our private Facebook page. And for those who rather watch the episodes, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. For more information, simply click the link found in each episode's show notes.